A few minutes for questions, so maybe you can sit here, and it's maybe Amal, Professor Amal Jamal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just very briefly, I think I wanted to present this also because I believe that now there's really a lot of this white guilt present everywhere, and that we are kind of lost, because I do acknowledge the criticism and the need for post-colonial intersectional thought and everything, but I also think that in certain circumstances it goes too far, that it becomes radical as well. So everything becomes problematic that comes, because I am very open to learn, and I also find myself in this position that I am humanitarian worker, white, in physically, symbolically, in all senses, and I would like to find new ways how to do these things. So, and I feel that there is a lot of violence and aggression from both sides now. How do we find new narratives, create new spaces, and so on? So I think also I'm quite stressed, if I can be honest, present this way, because there's been a lot of pushback in certain conferences to this kind, because, you know, there is, specifically in United States now, we have this, when people come to the stage, very often would present like, here, I'm a representative of this and this minority, of this and this gender. And I think it would be, and we are all aware that it would be very, very problematic for me to come on stage to say like, okay, I'm white, cis, hetero woman from Western Europe. So just turning the point that how far we are going now to representing minorities, it's also, I think, becoming reverse part of the problem, that I feel that I have to all the time also justify my position as a white, heterosis, if you want, woman. I believe that maybe I would want that we start to create narratives differently, so that it's been, that I think in the post-colonial criticism now we are doing exactly the same thing that we wanted to criticize with post-colonial. So, and then this with telling a woman, I think this is exactly criticism that we get as humanitarian workers. Like, okay, so why are you telling people what they need? What should you just ask them what they need? And I think it's not about telling people what they need and what we want to give them, but really providing information. So I would like to, and I think this is something we need to learn, because very fast we can moralize, very fast it can turn out that we are saying, okay, you should do this and this and this and this, because here we do this, this and this and this. But I also think that now we became afraid to just provide information, because it can already be perceived like we are telling people how they should do it, because this is how we do it in Europe. So I think maybe just the change of mode to, okay, there is this information. So when I talk about cultural sensitivity, for instance, sometimes we have a problem like, okay, I've just been recently in Lebanon, and we discussed a lot about what are the subjects and topics in sexual and reproductive health that we can address, and what are the things we cannot. And for instance, a lot of women from some local communities were like, okay, you talk about whatever you want, you know, but abortion is a no-go topic, because immediately when you mention this, people will not trust you, and they will not even, you know, refer to you. So now, do we completely skip this? Because I do believe there is people who need at least information, not necessarily. So if we just omit it because this is a no-go, then I don't know. So I think it's very, very tough. It's very hard to know. And just the last thing that you said, like about also, I wanted to, with this Lebanon thing, also said that when I was, at one point I was really lost, like, okay, so if we should not give information, if I am carrying this wild gift, let's see how people are doing in other countries. So not so far like Uganda, because in Uganda we have several other countries before refugees come to Europe. But I started to collect a lot of information about, I would say, neighboring countries. So countries where a lot of refugees stay before they come to Europe, meaning Lebanon, Turkey, Libya, and Morocco. So the most interesting thing that I found out now in these countries was, I went to these countries with the question like, okay, so what are your services that are non-white, non-Western, not so that you have your own local traditions? I don't know, Lebanese way of thinking. And most of the responses, they were like, we read Western feminist literature. And I was like, okay, no, don't tell me this because I want to know how you do it your way. So the thing is, we impact each other, and then I think we also adjust it. So today it's also hard to say like, okay, just Western feminist tradition. It's just Lebanese way of doing it. So they were even in a way confused, like, why are you asking me this? Because they were also like, we understand, I don't know, needs of women, abortion is abortion. It's not, to me it's not, it's very culturally specific. But for them it was even, for instance, ridiculous to understand that I'm making a problem to feel I'm doing it too European, if you understand. So to me this was quite insightful to say like, okay, I'm going to neighboring countries to see what services they offer before refugees come to Europe. And actually now we started to collaborate, and I think what we are building up is also interesting, because we are building a service that will be a continuation of the service that refugees, for instance, already get in Lebanon, in Turkey, or in Morocco. So I think this can be a middle way, a combo of different perspectives. Thanks for that. Just the, yeah.
Um,
Amal, we really need to go to the break. Maybe we continue the discussion downstairs.
this is a violation of my right.
Yeah.
So I have to.
Practice my,
I have to because I can't be with you during the break, and I have to leave. And I'm a Palestinian, so I have to speak now. Quickly, yeah. I won't hold you very long. But by the way, you know, I think one of the things that we have to pay attention to, and it's one of my failures too sometimes, is that we don't respect time and value the rights of others to have time to speak in their time. So I think we have to take that into consideration as part of violence also. Temporal violence, I would call it. Okay, I think, and it's not a critique of because of your comment. I think it's there in every conference. We are always late. We are always there because somebody, you know, takes the freedom to speak endlessly, and so on and so on. So take that into consideration. I think it's very important. But I would like to very quickly, 3 comments, really quickly. My paper is a critique of you know, the pacification narrative in political theory, which is very, very dominant. And mentioning, you know, Max Weber, Charles Tilly, and Anthony Giddens is sufficient for political scientists to know what I'm talking about. But it's also, you know, critique of, you know, I refer to Arendt's piece on violence and the focus on physical violence. And I think, you know, states tend to focus on exclusively on physical violence in order to hide actually other types of violence, and you spoke about it, you know, earlier this morning. And I think when we look at what's going on, it's very important to look at, you know, structural violence and symbolic violence and other types of violence, including temporal violence. This is quickly one point. The second point is that I'm not arguing that the Israeli state initiates violence in the Arab community, because this is the first comment I hear usually in Israeli conferences. Well, are you accusing the state that that Israel, you know, as a state is initiating violence? No, it's not the issue. The issue is, you know, violence is natural, and given the circumstances that I depicted a little bit, it's soaring. The issue is, what is the state doing in order to, you know, face this type of violence and deal with this type of violence? And I think the neglect I spoke about, the fact that there's no policing, is part of the. It's a question we have to pose. Why? And when we look at the Israeli official discourse, they don't speak about policing in the regular sense, but actually intervening, you know, or letting the Israeli Internal Intelligence Agency to intervene in order to solve the violent problem. This shows very much, you know, the nature of the Israeli state, the violence embedded in the Israeli state. That with these guys, the Arabs, it goes only with violence. It goes only with secret intelligence. You see, this framing of the whole issue. And now, you know, people are talking about giving the former criminal, our Minister of Interior Security, the right to, you know, for what we call administrative detention in order to deal with the problem. Instead of, you know, providing the, the necessary resource in order to deal with the problem seriously. Trying to speak about in a certain way at least alludes or at least reflects what I mean when I speak about the state, and that's why it's negative sovereignty. That's why it's negative sovereignty in the sense that, and they're related to politics and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This society is Palestinian. They can become Zionist, and therefore, there are other alternatives. It's an opportunity, actually. Violence is an opportunity to enable the state to control what's going on there and be asked to intervene. And the state is very reluctant to do it. The negotiations between the leadership of the Arab community and the state is such that the state is very, very reluctant to intervene. And you ask why? It has the technology to intervene. It knows very much. I mean, if a terrorist attack takes place or any Palestinian resistance attack, action takes place, within 48 hours, everybody knows in this country. How are you able to know what's going on in Natanz in Iran and not being able to know what's going on in al-Fahm, okay, or anywhere else? Why it did it, two comments, very quick. First of all, it came up, I mean, what's happening in the Arab community now, of course, I'm not talking about, the general thing is the fear, not the violence. Okay? You're shifting the focus. I'm speaking about the fear. Manufacturing fear is the issue, not manufacturing violence. Exploiting the violence in order to create fear. This is one thing. The second thing is take Netanya as an example. Why the Israeli state was able to solve, criminal issues in Netanya, in Khadira, in Kiryat Gat, and so on, and not in al-Fahm, and so on, and so on, and so on. These questions, I posed a theory, okay? You didn't have to accept it, but it makes sense. To me, it makes sense. Otherwise, give me a more coherent answer about what's going on. That's what I'm asking for. And sorry for the time limitations we have today.